Roxo Media House.
Welcome into another episode of Facing the Frogs. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Coach David Beaudin. We are breaking down the Texas Longhorns today as TCU gets ready to face that team down in Austin on Saturday. 6:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Game day is going to be there. Another huge weekend of football revolving around the now number 4 Horned Frogs in the latest iteration of the college football playoff rankings. Coach, this is a very exciting matchup. I know that we're going to dive into some really good film here of Texas's win over Kansas State up in Manhattan last week. We're going to talk about Quinn Ewers. We're going to talk about this defense, maybe even a little bit about one of their special assistants, Gary Patterson, over on that sideline as well. But, Coach, as we get into this, this is a big matchup for the Frogs this week for a variety of reasons. Obviously looking to get to 10-0, ranked in the top 4 in the college football playoff rankings right now. But there's just so much kind of revolving around this game this week.
There is, and we all know the storyline, right? You mentioned Gary Patterson, and that'll certainly be beaten to death. And of course, we're going to cover it here as you've done, Jamie, and Jeff Wilson and others on frogstoday.com. But for this one, for Facing the Frogs, man, we've got to hit some football, right?
Yes.
It's nice. I like to hear about all that stuff, and I do appreciate it. It's very interesting to read and talk about. But there's a really good football game ahead of us with 2 quality football teams and programs. And so, man, I'm fired up to dive into the schematics of it.
We've talked about this a couple times as we've encountered other big games this season, Coach, but how do you as a head coach make sure that, if you're Sonny Dykes right now and TCU's ranked 4th, they've got all this national media attention, game day is coming to the second game of the year that that TCU has been a part of, just everything that's going on outside of the program that is looking at the program. How do you keep these guys focused on the task at hand?
Yeah, I think, and Coach Dykes talked about this a little bit in his post-game presser, and we've had a chance to speak with him a little bit more about it. But really, they were just sort of ignoring it. It was happening organically. He had mentioned for the longest time that his team hadn't heard anything about rankings or bowl games or any of that stuff, championships. It just hadn't done it, and he hadn't met with his staff one time about it, which I found amazing. He said that he was genuine when he said it, and I found that amazing. Now though, just being in the top 4 course with the college football playoff committee coming out, it's impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kids are hearing it, and I think he started to sense, especially in the last couple games, that maybe they were playing a little tight because of it, right?
Yeah.
And especially this early in games. And he, as any good head coach does, he took responsibility and said, look, we're probably coaching a little tight early on too, meaning not as aggressive as they want to be. Because, look, their identity is, play to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds very simple, but it's not playing not to lose. And so going forward in some 4th downs and, just being aggressive in play calling and all of that on both sides of the ball, really in all 3 phases. And so I think he wants to get back to that one, to answer your question. And the second thing is now he does have to address it, right? You can't just ignore it. He knows it's starting to, seep in a little bit, although this is a mature group that can keep it at bay. So he's now saying, okay, look, remind them of what got us here, right? What got us here, and that was really it's so cliche, and as Coach Dykes says, so quote-unquote lame, right, when he mentions that stuff. But it's true on the whole one day at a time and trying to win that practice, right?
Yeah.
Just trying to be 1-0 every day. And I think, they kind of reset themselves. And the last thing on that, Jamie, is the last 2 weeks has allowed them – I think it's really kind of gold for a football coach, right, where, you can escape both games with wins and still have a bunch of stuff to work on and get in the film room and command their attention. So I think it's kind of a really good situation where you're not blowing teams out so guys can get kind of lackadaisical and think they're on top of the world. There's a lot to correct on film, and still get 2 victories, I think really that's a good scenario for them as they head into Texas.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it all the time, right? It's one thing to learn or to win, but it's something different when you're learning and winning all at the same time.
Yeah, I like I said, I think it's the coach's dream. I think that's the way you want it, right?
Yeah.
You want your guys engaged and locked in, and of course still piling up those victories.
Yeah, and I think there's something to what you said, too, about the Frogs coming out a little tight, not just the players, but also the play calling. You know, you look at some of the advanced metrics around TCU these last couple of weeks, their run rate over expected has gone way up, which, you know, partly is due to Quentin Johnson being a little bit banged up, but, you know, relying a little bit more on the run the last couple of weeks than they had in the previous 7 games or so. So that'll definitely be something interesting as the Frogs head to a very hostile environment down in Austin. DKR is not an easy place to play as an opponent. And Texas is rolling right now. This is a team, as we kind of turn our attention to the film for today, that has got things clicking on offense, especially in the first half. We talk about slow starts for TCU. On offense last week, Texas got out to a really fast start. They scored 31 points in the first half, and that's kind of where we're going to start our film breakdown today.
Kyle Flood's the offensive coordinator, but really, you know, this is a Steve Sarkisian led offense, right?
Kyle Flood, who's also their offensive line.
He is the offensive line coach,
Yeah.
yep. Tremendous offensive line coach. Used to be the head coach at Rutgers. He came over with Sark from Bama. He was the offensive line coach there. But really a smart football coach, does a nice job with this offensive line. We're going to take a look at that here. Tashard Choice, who you might be familiar in this area because he's a running back for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Also coached at UNT up this way. Went to Georgia Tech, and then they brought him over. Sark brought him over as soon as he got to UT. And then Brennan Marion, one of the brightest, youngest offensive minds.
He was at Pitt last year.
He was at Pitt, had a Biletnikoff Award winner, who's now at USC. We can kind of trace all those things back and forth, but you know, so that was a big get for them to get him over there. Jeff Banks, who coaches their tight ends, obviously the special teams coordinator, he's from Alabama as well.
Love Jeff Banks, Pole Assassin, the monkey story. It's all great.
Yeah, not the show for it, but we're gonna. And so. But, you know, so there's some familiarity. We know that these people are. And then A.J. Milwee's a guy who was an analyst. He used to be he did a nice job as a young coach. I think he was 27 as the OC at Akron for about 6 years. He went to Bama as an analyst. He brought him over. So a lot of guys from this Alabama staff offensively is where they are. So that kind of sets the scene for them as a coaching staff on offense. And then we'll get into a little bit of personnel and scheme here, Jamie. So let's jump into it finally here. Play one, right off the bat. Quinn Ewers, who most, if you're tuning in, probably have a good sense who that is. He's a redshirt freshman out of South Lake Carroll, although he forego his senior year of high school. So really this would have been his true freshman year anywhere else or any other time. But it went to Ohio State, didn't work out, transferred over. He's got elite arm strength. He's still a little shaky in his decision making. They're trying to figure some things out. You can tell he's grown in this offense already. But this is a good look here. I mean, look, this isn't a 70-yard throw, although he's capable. This is over 40 yards, and he just flicks it. Comes out of a naked, flicks the ball, and I think it's a good look here on his arm strength and what he can do. It's he can throw off platform, really good job doing that. Doesn't have to be set, with his feet, and this is a good example. So right off the bat, Texas will come out in this condensed formation. So you see 2 receivers here. They do a nice job in these condensed sets, bringing receivers across, behind the line of scrimmage. And they do that here in the naked. And they do a nice job with their tight ends, running corner routes and verticals and things like that on the other side. But you're going to see a lot from them early, as we talked about. You're going to see that starting here in the opener play. So this is a naked. He misfires, but again, you can see that arm strength. We go to the end zone real quick. Take a look at the offensive line. They do a nice job here. This is a naked, and normally, if we go back to these linebackers, we're going to talk a lot about that, Jamie, because of Banks, Shadrack Banks, who is filling in for D. Winters the first half of this game. So really, a lot's going to be put on him, especially with all the eye candy that Texas gives you, right? And so a lot of times when you run naked, the way to tell is you can see sort of a flatter path. You can almost see their rear ends going back, right? And so now okay, this thing's really not blocking zone. This thing's naked. I can get back around out of it. Well, Texas does a nice job staying pretty square here. You can see here kind of setting this edge. We'll take a look at this. Staying square to make it look like it's more zone, right? I know that he turns because he's uncovered. But the guys that are covered stay square to block those things, makes it challenging for these linebackers. Now, Kansas State does a nice job, and this is where Shadrack Banks has really got – I'm sure they're working with him all week. TCU does this the same way. Okay, this is your push player, meaning if it was just straight sprint out or some kind of naked like it is here, you need one player to push to the quarterback right now, and then this linebacker has to take his zone. Okay, and so these are things that are, again, they do it in the high school level as well, but it's still complicated to understand who's pushing, who's not, and when to push to other zones. And these are things, as Shadrack Banks, as talented as he is, as fast as he is at his size, is still sort of learning the position a little bit at this level. Mm-hmm. And so, this is a lot to get in 1 week, Jamie.
And he's been working with the twos pretty consistently over the last month or so, Banks has, because of injuries to pretty much the entire second linebacking unit for TCU. Thomas Armstrong went down, Marcel Brooks went down, Terrence Cook, who's a transfer from Texas, also went down, all with ACL injuries. That was the entire second string of this linebacking core for TCU, which bumped Banks back up into that second unit kind of just out of necessity. He did play pretty well in limited time against Texas Tech once D. Winters got tossed for targeting, which is why he's missing the first half of this game against Texas. But you're right, this is going to be a really, really big challenge for 19.
Yeah, and it's another example for him here, right? I'm sure they're going to watch this play. Kansas State does this really well. And so this is off that jet look that we've seen on the offensive end for TCU a lot. And what they do is TCU has done this a lot where they'll zone this way and they'll hand the jet opposite to kind of influence the linebackers. So they'll influence the linebackers going this way and hand this thing. Well, Texas has shown the same exact play, except now they toss it out to the running back. We'll get into those running backs here in a minute. But, what they do well is they just read their keys. They just go, right? Mm-hmm. So that right now they're reading, okay, I've got full flow this way. I don't care what's going on here. On the play side, they're just going to go. And then on the backside, the defensive end and this backside linebacker is going to play just in case he did, toss it to this jet sweep or he naked it out of it again. So really disciplined by K-State. This is something that TCU really should take a look at and making sure they understand responsibilities. But this is a good look here.
And as you can see, it's a minimal gain for Texas on this play. They do end up giving it to Bijan Robinson, who is arguably the best running back in the country this year. I think the kid up in Michigan might have something to say about that. Kendra Miller might have something to say about that as well. But Bijan's definitely up there.
Yeah, and K-State might have something to say about it as well.
Yeah, a little Deuce Vaughn action,
right?
Yeah.
Depending on what type of back that you like. But certainly the Big 12 is loaded with running backs as well. Roschon Johnson on the team. We'll talk about him in a little while. But it's a good time right now for the Big 12. Typically not known, for a while there, or known for their running backs.
Yeah.
But they're back to that. One other thing of note here, if you watch the defensive end, he gets a down block. I mean, he's trying to pin and pull here, so they're trying to block down and pull outside. Well, this is where Terrell Cooper, Dylan Horton, they've got to fight pressure with pressure, meaning he's getting a down block, and now he's got to fight that pressure back inside because he knows there's a reason why that down block is happening. If he's blocking down on him, he's got to get his hands on that man and know that he's doing that for a reason because the ball's trying to go out here. All right, so K-State here, Ronnie Warren does a nice job. See how he fights pressure with his hands and fights back, trying to get across his face, and that strings that thing out for the linebackers to get over the top. Really nice job, and something that I know the defensive ends for TCU will be taking a look at as well. So that was 2nd and 10. It brings up 3rd and 9, and again now we're in a 3-by-1 spread concept, right? Excuse me, spread formation. And so we've seen multiple formations here already in
the first 3 plays.
Yeah, vastly different, right, in the first 3 plays. And that's a theme with Texas, especially early. Bunch of different formations, motions, all kinds of eye candy to try and get you distracted where you can't read your keys. And so they've got to have great eye discipline this week if you're TCU on that defensive front, really in the secondary as well. So something to keep an eye on. They go drop back pass here and run a levels concept. So what that is you get guys, you get this double in here. Okay. You get double in this way. Excuse me. All right, here as well. And K-State's in 2-man, Jamie. So they're man underneath, okay, and then 2 deep behind here. All right, this is typically a good play. Any kind of double in is good versus a Tampa 2 coverage, right? We'll see that a little bit, a version of that from TCU when they go drop 8, right? So you've got to be aware of this. This is a middle of the field open defense, right? Meaning we talked about man free all the time or cover 3, and you've got that free safety right here. So that's referred to as a middle, the field closed, obviously. So middle of the field open. Now what you have to do. So if you're TCU, you've got to make sure that they don't beat you with the one-on-ones out here because as the defense suggests, the middle of the field is open, right? So that's where they're vulnerable in here, and so you want to make sure that you've got to win these things or not allow them to win it on the outside. If they can do that and be physical, Josh Newton and Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, on the outside, and certainly these safeties for TCU. That's got to be something to keep an eye on all week, or really on Saturday, and make sure that they're winning those things and dominating and not getting them to win inside, because that's going to be one of the keys when you have that middle of the field open defense.
Going to be a big day too for some of these safeties. Mark Perry, Nnamdi Obiezor, Nook Bradford obviously is back as well. They're going to have to do a lot in coverage as well today or on Saturday, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as you see here, that like big physical receivers outside, right, for Texas. And so, these are things that you've got to match that physicality, and that's not it. I mean, I'm just, you look, he does a double hand jam, or he tries to, and by doing that, instead of posting them up with that one hand, a lot of times you're longer with one than you are with two, meaning your reach is obviously a lot longer. You've got to be able to do that. He does both hands and ends up lunging a little bit, and you can't do that against these big physical receivers. He just swats it down, and then he'll break inside. Now he's won the route. Again, we talked about middle of the field's wide open, so now you got to be able to win those. They don't hear, and they come up with the first down. So now it's 1st and 10. And again, right off the bat, okay, we're now in a situation where they shift to an unbalance. Okay, so we now have seen, okay, this is going to be an RPO from Texas, but it's unbalanced. And what that means is they've now shifted over. There's no one on this side, but this tight end here, right here, is covered up. So he's covered up by this one. So he would be ineligible. Right here, this tight end would be ineligible for to go out for a pass.
Okay.
But it's just creating another gap. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-man surface to this side, so you now have to be responsible for an extra gap to that side. And so, again, just throwing so much at you early and different looks and whatnot. This is a very typical RPO here. So we haven't seen a lot, believe it or not, of these on Facing the Frogs, as much as in vogue as they were for so long. But this is a standard one. It's just zone away, okay, and then they run double slant inside. And again, this is just another look. Now, they dropped this one, and the safety but this is another look at Quinn Ewers where he's sort of off platform, right? He flips his hips quick and just slings it, almost like a shortstop. But he's able to, that's sort of his deal. And now his eyes are on this one. He trusts these receivers, once again, Jamie, to win these routes, right? He has a lot of confidence in these guys. So as soon as he sees this one go and vacate, then now he's able to sling that in there. And so, again, you've got to be able to win those things. Now, again, they don't complete this, but, this is a big part of who they are for Texas.
Yeah, and they don't complete this. It's not because of Kansas State. It's just because of a lack of execution on this particular play. And do they get a penalty on this play? Because it looks like a pretty big hit over the middle.
Yep, they sure do. And it ends up being another first down, a big first down. And, the reason, if we want to get into the nitty-gritty, and the reason why he drops this, in my opinion, is as he's coming out of his break, we'll watch the receiver drop his hands below his waist. As soon as he drops his hands below his waist, you tend to flail at the ball like that instead of carrying your elbows above your waist, and then you're able to be in a better position. But, again, I don't know. Brennan Marion can take care of that. He's a much better football coach or receiver coach than I am. So there it is. But that's the reason. So now they pick up 1st and 10 after the penalty, and you can see it. Take a look here at the end zone for their unbalanced formation and zone, and rips it out there. So, all
right. So they get the first down on that penalty, which I believe was targeting over the middle. Unfortunate for Kansas State, they lose a safety right out of the gate. But what do we see here? They're going back to a formation they've already run now. It looks like, as far as formations they've run on this drive.
Yes, they did, but they start off with split backs, so it's twins open, meaning the backside's open with split backs, and they motion one of the backs out to create a 3-by-1 again. And this is not an RSO, the run screen option. This is just, even though they flash fake the running back this way, that's just, again, to get your eyes somewhere else, right? And they're going to throw a quick screen out here, screen the whole way, because you can see that they're going to release the line of scrimmage right away as well on that path and get them out there in front of it. Kind of, here comes the convoy. And again, this is where Ewers does a nice job. Look how fast he gets this ball out, lets the ball back across his face. He just flicks it to the receiver and gets the ball out quickly. This is where I think he does his best work, is just ripping the ball and being a distributor, getting it out fast. Okay, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays in now. Okay, and we've seen in some combination of this, we've seen the spread 3-by-1 here, right? We've got an unbalanced formation. We've got an RPO. We've got this quick screen. We've got shifts. We've got condensed formations. We've seen nakeds. We've seen spread formations. We've seen the fake jet. Right, we're 5 plays in. So I think this is what we were talking about at the beginning here, that they're just going to continue to throw all kinds of try and scheme you up early, and you have to hang in there. You have to hang in there long enough until they can settle down and sort of just run, quote unquote, their base offense. So that's going to be key for the Frogs on Saturday. All right, so another condensed formation, and this time we'll add it play 6 on this drive, and now we're in a tight trips FIB, which is formation in the boundary. So we've set that formation in the boundary with the nub tight end to the field.
Good old nub.
You love it. You love to see it. But again, this is something to look at here. They hand the ball off obviously to Bijan Robinson. However, just be aware, if you're TCU, and they didn't show this in this K-State game, but if Quinn keeps this, all right, if they heel line sort of chase this thing and he keeps it, he now has 2 blockers out in front of him, if they wanted to kind of bluff zone this thing and keep these guys out. So, again, and Quinn, that's not really where he's going to make his money, but he's certainly capable enough to take the yards that are there.
You have to respect it.
There's no question. Yeah, he's not a statue back there. He's certainly athletic enough to go ahead and do that. I know that's not where they want him all the time. Certainly, running around all over the field. They want to try and protect him. But he will do that, so you have to make sure you respect it.
Texas is really just kind of marching down the field here.
Yeah, they are, and that penalty was really a tough one for K-State, but they're doing a decent job with these linebackers, understanding, hey, okay, again, these guys front side are seeing it, seeing full flow, and they're hanging back for anything on this side, doing a nice job of that at least, but it's just not enough at this point. So again, now we got a 3-by-1 with a closed back end. We've seen 3-by-1 open with a receiver out here. Now again, there's your nub tight end, but they'll motion the split back out to trips to 3-by-1 with a closed back end. So we've seen it. We're seeing it all, from Texas on this first drive.
Kansas State gets some good pressure on Ewers here.
Yeah, they do, and this is a protection that TCU actually uses a lot. We've gone over this. In fact, if you tune into Dissecting the Frogs, you'll see TCU, and we'll talk about this protection on this last episode. But really, this is showing off that power look, which they hadn't shown Texas a ton, but that's that pulling guard, and then everyone else is going to block down a gap this way, and they'll pull, and he'll take that C gap on the outside. But the pressure here, he doesn't pull tight enough, and so he's got to now work back, and they're all messed up in terms of. But this is again protection. I think this is where Ewers, you kind of see his inexperience a little bit, right? We know about his arm strength, we know what he can do, getting the ball out quick. We've talked about that, but this is something here on this protection. He needs to go on the play action and then reset for depth. He needs to, reset, and he kind of hangs in there a little bit. Doesn't help his offensive line out by not resetting. Now here, I'm sure it would have mattered as much because they've got they cut one loose, and so he just being smart here and throws it away. But again, pretty amazing that he can just get rid of this. I know I know complimenting a quarterback for throwing a ball out of bounds, but honestly, you know, with that much pressure in his face, instead of taking the huge sack, again, this shows how strong his arm is, and you know, he's completely he's actually jumps and throws this thing, you know, missile out of bounds. So smart play by him and keeps them alive here. Final play on the drive here results in a touchdown for Texas, and they're now in a balanced set. So we're seeing it all. We're in 12 personnel, meaning one running back, two tight ends, okay, one here and one here. They'll motion this tight end. They'll run GH counter, which is the guard and the H back right here. But they switch roles. This is actually different. This is a nice or a little small twist on a basic play. Normally it's the guard first that is the kick guy, and then the H-back will wrap inside. Well, they motion him out in front, so he becomes the lead kick guy, and then the guard wraps inside. So they just switch responsibilities. You can see that here. So now he becomes the kick guy. This guard does a nice job staying tight to the pole, and here's Beaudin Robinson, okay, who is just so dangerous. You know, he's actually recruited at Texas by Brian Carrington, who's the recruiting coordinator here for TCU. And so we're familiar with him there, but he is one heck of a talent. We're going to see that on display here. But I want to note something here. As good as he is, okay, this is, to me, and this is the final play on offense and what we're going to talk about on defense here for TCU. We talk about all the things they have to do this week, right, and staying disciplined, doing all those things. At the end of the day, if we want to just strip away everything, they've got to be great tacklers, and particularly at the safety position. If they're going to add hats in with safety, you can't come in like this, Jamie. So, you know, we want to just kind of watch. As soon as you get to a big back like that and you drop and lower your head and lower your shoulder, in stride, Beaudin Robinson just hurdles him in stride and then takes off, and the rest is history. And that's all it takes, right? I mean, this is a basic play, but it's one guy, you know, not doing his job, and I'm not trying to pick on the safety from K-State, but the reality is that that's all it's going to take this week is one guy not being disciplined, whether it's his eyes or, more importantly, you know, not coming in and wrapping up and you know, staying square and shuffling and making the tackle.
Oh, TCU safeties have missed a couple tackles here and there this season as well, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. This is obviously a touchdown drive for the Longhorns. They get out to a 7-0 lead here en route to a 31-24 victory over Kansas State. We're going to take a look at the Longhorns on the defensive side of the ball right after this break.
Simply the best barbecue in Fort Worth. Dine in, catering, or drive-through. 2900 Montgomery, just off I-30. Remember, the best barbecue in Fort Worth is at Railhead Smokehouse.
Texas-based Happy Water offers the best-tasting, sugar-free kids drink ever made. Happy Water comes in 4 delicious flavors that you can find at local retailers and on Amazon. Each pouch contains 0 grams of sugar, 0 calories, and 0% juice. Head to happydrinks.com for more information and to purchase Happy Water. That's HAPI Live happy, be happy, drink happy.
The Flying T Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student athletes. Flying T Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T Club or online at flyingtclub.com. For exclusive interviews and content on TCU recruits, subscribe now at frogstoday.com. Any sport, anytime. It's your source for all things TCU. Only on frogstoday.com.
Welcome back into Facing the Frogs. We're here taking a look at the Texas Longhorns. Jamie Plunkett alongside Coach David Beaudin. Coach, we just took a look at the offense. It was very varied, if you will. A lot going on there, a lot of different looks, a lot of eye candy for TCU's defense. Defensively, though, for Texas, they are a unit that is improving. They've got some really big boys up front. We're going to get into that conversation here in a moment. But as Texas takes on Kansas State in this first offensive possession for the Wildcats last week, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so first I want to set the table, sort of who they are defensively, right, and their backgrounds a little bit. Defense coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski is a guy who I got to know a little bit. He was when he was at defense coordinator at University of Washington, had a ton of success there. he recruited Texas, and particularly North Texas. And so he was a guy that was down here a lot, so he's familiar of these fertile recruiting grounds and did a nice job. But he's a guy that sort of has been running that odd hybrid 4-3-3-4 that we talked about a week ago. And because I remember him coming in the office, we'd talk. He had a lot of visits where he'd go out and visit the Patriots with Bill Belichick and learned a lot there as well. He's a guy that was with Chris Peterson at Boise. He played at Boise, coached there, and anyhow. So he was hired. He was a big name at the time, had done a heck of a job, had a top defense in the country. He brought along Jeff Choate, who's a guy who was the head coach at Montana State, but was with Kwiatkowski at Boise and Washington before that. So you don't have the Alabama influence on the defensive side, right? Terry Joseph's a guy who was at A&M. He's been at LSU. He's been at Notre Dame, coaching secondary. He's a defensive passing coordinator as well. And then Bo Davis is a guy that was at Texas years ago. He was at Alabama. He had some stops in the NFL as well. But he was the lone guy that came over from Alabama coaching the defensive line. So that's who they are. And then there is another guy on defensive staff as an analyst that you might have heard of named Coach Gary Patterson. So, but honestly, this is Kwiatkowski's defense in terms of the structure of it. And then every once in a while, I think you'll see on those money downs, gotta have it downs, you'll see a pressure that you saw a lot here in Fort Worth. So they'll dial that up, and so you'll see some things that'll pop. But honestly, I think, and I don't mean this to discredit Coach Patterson. I think he'd tell you himself that Kwiatkowski is the defense coordinator, and this is his defense. He's going to get input. He's going to have understanding. He's going to have an intimate knowledge of personnel and those sort of things. But this is a different TCU team, and I think that sometimes that whole side of things can be overblown, right? It's just at the end of the day, everything's on film these days, right, Jamie? So regardless if you knew the players or not, or what, I mean, everything is there's no real secrets. It's you are who you are on film. This is something that Alon Ali is going to have to contend with. He commented this week and said, I have a tremendous challenge ahead of me. You can kind of see why. I want to look at the end zone. This Keandre Coburn, who's I think he's 6'2", 344, and that's not a program 344. He's all of it. If he has a good hearty breakfast, he might be a pound or two heavier than that. K-State does the center no favors here, right? And they come out and throw the ball, and they put him on an island to begin with. And I suspect they're going to get the guards involved, this week with Wes Harris and Steve Avila, guys that can come over and help on that nose. Not that Alana Lee's not capable. It's just a lot to ask any center to be able to do that on an island against a guy this big and this powerful and moves this well, right? So it will definitely be a challenge. You can kind of take a look at that. But, going back to the structure of the defense, this is they come over in what they call an over front here. All right, so even would be if this, if he was here and here, any kind of combination over the guards. Once you move this guy over, right, that's where kind of you get it from, over the center in this shade here, now it becomes an over front. That does change your blocking combinations, particularly in the run game a little bit. So, but they are the hybrid guy. This is your hybrid player in order to get you in that. And we're going to talk a little bit back on the next one here. So it goes into that's first and 10. And I want to take a look at the wide again. We're going to spend a little bit of time on just this one play, and then we'll cruise along just so I can set the scene here on defense. So they start off, they're a big quarters team, but this is a match quarters, what they call, it looks like palms coverage, okay? And I'm going to talk you through a little bit what that is, Jamie. And so that can kind of vary between a cover two and a quarters look depending on the routes by the offense, okay? So what they're doing is you can see the corner looking inside, even though he's playing quarters, and normally quarters means he has this deep quarter. Well, he's looking in because anything out under like roughly around 7 yards, he would then take that, and then if this was vertical, the safety would play over the top of it. That's kind of more of a cover two look, okay? But you can see his eyes. Even though he's lined up over the number one receiver, his eyes are over the number two receiver. If two goes vertical, okay, at that 7 yard mark, and every defense is a little bit different, but around that mark, his eyes then are going to transition back to number one. All right, and then he'll let the safety take that and then he'll go and look at the number one receiver, and he'll now basically he's got essentially man on at that point, right? Because he's now given that one up this vertical. So that's who they are structurally, in coverage. This is them a lot of times. And then with that quarters look in the run game, because this is a run play, he's going to be more of the force player or a run support player, and he would bail out and play over the top of anything in terms of in case it was play action pass or things like that. So you're going to see him play. The safeties play a little bit more flat-footed. They'll insert themselves in the run. They're not pedaling out to begin with when they're in this quarters coverage.
Gotcha.
So that's my little dissertation on Palms coverage.
Thank you for your TED Talk. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. That's what we'll do here. That's what we do here on Facing the Frogs. All right, so now we're going to fly along a little bit. And they'll get into K-State, gets in this 3-by-1 formation. And I want you to take a look at this one here. This is number 39, Maurice Blackwell Jr. So he's sort of the adjuster, right? This is going to be something for TCU, whether he plays apex out here, all right, which is, that apex between these two players, or he plays on the line of scrimmage to match this one, all right? And so that's going to matter quite a bit. Over on this side here, Jamie, this is Ovi Agofu. He's a transfer from Notre Dame. So he's that stand-up player where he was going to, now they're in an odd. He's going to cap outside the tight end and play that tight end in this odd front. So basically creates a 5-man front here. But when it's 4 down and he was out here and the front's kicked this way, then now he becomes more of a defensive end, whereas here he's more of an outside linebacker. So that 3-4-4-3 hybrid has a lot to do with Ovi here as that hybrid player that can do both things. But keep an eye on this one. This is going to matter for TCU where he is on this side. All right. So we'll go to the next one. That was 2nd and 2. They were in an odd. And, that was verse 12 personnel. So now it's 1st and 10. Again, K-State's in the exact formation. So I want you to take a look at this one again. Same exact formation, so it's a good comparison here. Now he is apex, right? Now he is apex here. He's not playing over this one. So this is more of a, hey, we think it's a pass look with 3 over 2, whereas the play before is on 2nd and 2, we're thinking, okay, they're going to run the ball, so he's going to match that one. So they've got to identify when they get in these sets here, they've got to identify where this one is because TCU is going to be in an odd front, and it puts – when you have this attached guy here to create trips, it puts a lot of pressure on this one on where he's going to line up, and it strains the defense a little bit if you're TCU, and so you want to get in those sets, but you need to identify this one.
So it's just a visual key for Duggan as he's lined up pre-snap to know, all right, this is kind of what they're anticipating, and how do we counter that? Here we're now so, again, we talked about same formation a 3rd time, and now, again, they think, okay, well, we're getting hurt by run. We're going to bring him back inside. So it's just this cat and mouse game right now. and K-State, to their credit, is saying, look, we're having success with it. We're just going to keep lining up in the same formation. They do it 3 times in a row. But, again, we've seen first he was on the line in an odd. Then they stayed in odd. They put him out here. And now he's back on the line of scrimmage. So something to keep an eye on for sure. And it doesn't really matter where he's going. Kansas State is moving the ball down the field. They are. And smart here, too, by K-State. I want to note that TCU, I'm sure, taking a look at this. When they do this, now they've got them declaring a sort of a man-free formation, coverage. So he's deep, and they know they can just get these guys out of here. So they run a bubble. They're not going to ever throw it out here with 2-on-2, or it's highly unlikely. But, again, just pulls them out of the box completely. Don't have to worry about the safety inserting in the run fit, and they're able to gash them in the run. This is definitely looks like something that TCU can take advantage of when you consider, you've got Kendra Miller in the backfield, Darius Davis out wide, Tay Barber out there as well, and obviously if Quentin Johnston is good to go. Absolutely. And one other thing to note, Jamie, these linebackers here is something I think they can get after a little bit. The inside backers, they don't do a great job sort of falling back, right? They see the zone here. Instead of falling back inside, they just sort of step up. So I think you can influence these guys in the zone run game a little bit and then get swallowed up by TCU's big tackles. You pointed out Keandre Coburn on this first drive, or the first play of this drive, but Kansas State's offensive line looks like they adjusted pretty quickly and have been doing a good job against this really good Texas front. Yeah, they have. And they've been, smartly getting a double team on him as well, and getting 2 bodies on it. But I think, tackles just have to make sure they keep their eyes up in their double teams this week
with Coker and Brandon Coleman. They've got to make sure that they keep their eyes up because these linebackers step up right away, that they're not going to be able to stay on this double team as long as they'd like to move the down man. And if they don't have their eyes up and eyes on these linebackers, they'll have some run-throughs. So K-State does a nice job. You watch this right tackle here, to come off that double team right now, and then it gives the running back a lane. So that's something certainly TCU will be focused on this week.
Perfect. All right, let's keep rolling.
All right, early on, we talked about Texas playing a lot of quarters. That goes back to, early in the year, Jamie, on Facing the Frogs, we talked about that, what that means in the run game. We talked earlier how they run support safeties. That means the wide receivers for TCU have to block the safeties this week in the run game. They have to be able to push those corners off and go block they call it a spy block or a push crack, where they push the corners off and then go block the safety. That normally happens on the outside. This one here, you can see it on the inside, and what he's doing is he'll go in and get the safeties from the receiver. They have to be able to account for those guys all game long. You can see it here as well for K-State. They're trying to work inside and block these safeties. He's trying to block the safeties because they know those are the run support guys, right? So they've got to get in and do a good job this week. The wide receivers have to be engaged blocking these safeties if they want a chance in the run game.
One guy who stands out in that regard is Savion Williams. He always seems completely willing to stick his nose in wherever he has an opportunity, even if he's not getting the football.
He definitely is, and he's got the size and strength to do it. And really, across the board, TCU does. They have the willingness, the size, and the speed to get there. And so I think that's going to be a fascinating, matchup to watch in development throughout the game. Here on this one, again, just kind of looking at these inside linebackers, I don't think that's the strength of the team for Texas right now. This guy's just got to go. He's got pullers in front of him, 2 pullers. So he sees pull. He should be over the top now. He hangs back. He's not a quarterback player. Here's your quarterback player. He's already there. He needs to get over the top of that. So I think one thing to note is Max Duggan's got a group. This is very vanilla idea, but he's got to do a great job of carrying out play fakes. If he can influence a backside linebacker inside like this, then he's got to make sure that he's carrying those things out every single time to help his running backs out. And I'm sure he will.
Oh, yeah, he's that kind of player.
Absolutely. Here we've got bluff zone, meaning it looks like split zone where he's going to block here. Kansas State rallies, to this one, and then Adrian Martinez will keep it. This is something you can see Max Duggan do. Again, we're keeping an eye on this one. He's now here, so we know we've got some space out here. Again, they do a nice job. They get him in man free. As soon as you get him in man free, you know that you can block 2 for 1, meaning they're going to play you man, so we're going to let this thing roll. So his eyes are on that receiver. And the thought here is because his eyes are on this receiver, he can take this one inside, and Texas does a good job sloughing off late, but he can take that inside, go block this safety, and now block 2 guys with 1 because of that.
Away,
that's right. So as soon as they know they have man underneath, this is something else that they need to be able to do. So a lot of different things here for the receivers in the run game. Not something you think about when you think about the wide receiver position, but it's going to be critical on Saturday.
Well, these wide receivers for TCU too are such a huge threat that I think they'll be able to pull that attention away pretty easily.
Agreed. So last one here results in a touchdown. This is very similar, almost identical. The formation was a little bit different, but to what you saw the Amari DiMarcardo touchdown late in that Texas Tech game, this is the same idea where it's a vertical concept, but they're overloading one side of the field. And so they do this to Texas here where he's going to run inside and influence the safety, so it takes him out of there. And then all of a sudden you see the back out of the backfield run the wheel, so the corner does a nice job. He sloughs off of this one. He takes this one. The problem is for this back here, you don't have one up the seam. Instead of running one back at this safety, it doesn't allow him to come over in time. He gets past the linebacker. They throw the whole shot, and away we go. And so, again, this is something that TCU just ran. I'm sure they'll have something up their sleeve that's somewhat similar on Saturday, man. And I'm telling you, this is going to be an awesome football game. I can't wait. I mean, it's, yes, the 9-0, yes, the drama, the Gary Patterson story we just talked about. All of that is great, but it's going to be a phenomenal football game Saturday, and, man, I can't wait to be there.
Yeah, I think people would look at Texas's record and say, oh, they've already got 3 losses. Maybe they're not that good. But, Quinn Ewers got hurt in that Alabama game. They only lost that by a point in Austin. He missed the Texas Tech game, which they lost as well. And so, he's working his way back from injury when they lose their third game, and now he's fully healthy, right? So this is two fully healthy teams that are going to be absolutely slugging it out. I'm going to use one of your words from pregame show a couple weeks ago, Coach. It's going to be a slobber knocker out there. We're going to see these two teams really getting after it back and forth. I think my guess is, we'll get to our predictions on the Frogs Today show later in the week, but I think this is going to be a pretty high-scoring affair with just all of the different opportunities that these offenses are going to have to get after one another on Saturday. Yeah, no,
this is definitely a quality football program. If you ask the national pundits right now, I mean, they act like they've already won the national championship,
That's
right?
True.
So, but
I think they've got a higher percentage to make the playoffs than TCU.
They do somehow. I haven't figured that one out. But again, to your point, this is a quality football program. They have had some tough breaks and all that. And you can see we've seen the personnel here as we looked at film today. So this is going to be a good one, and two teams playing at a high level right now. Should be a lot of fun.
It's going to definitely be a lot of fun. We're both going to be down in Austin for this game. Just as a reminder, on game days, Coach Beaudin is in our forums, in the Inside TCU Sports Forum on frogstoday.com, breaking down every play, giving you analysis that you're not going to get anywhere else. It's this level of depth in our forums during every TCU football game, so make sure you check that out. Obviously, you can check out all of the written content over at frogstoday.com. Check out our YouTube page. Don't be shy. Like, subscribe, comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you want to see more of so we can make sure that we're always meeting your needs, what you guys want, because we do this for you. It's always a good time to make sure that we're meeting Frog fans.
Yeah, you can tell us what you don't
like
are. Too, right?
Yeah, you can do that, I guess. That's great. Awesome. Well, guys, this has been another episode of Facing the Frogs. Jamie Plunkett for Coach David Beaudin. We will see you next week when we're breaking down the Baylor Bears. Until then, go Frogs.
Roxo Media House.